Let's get to Chippy. Chippy this morning on a breakfast, because there's a couple of clips here to play. They've been talking a bit about the economy and what's happening in the economy up until this point. And they've been talking a bit about how the Reserve Bank is being handled and how this government is perhaps being a bit more controlling of the Reserve Bank than the last guys were. And then that flows into a conversation around house prices and what we want to see with our house prices. Is the economy going to recover thanks to house prices? How is Labor going to deal with house prices versus National? And that's where they're coming into now. So they're coming out of the back of the conversation around Reserve Bank, and they're about to move into the conversation around house prices.
Is there something going on here that is wrong about the relationship with the Reserve Bank and the government? Adrian Orr resigned in March, had the disagreement with Finance Minister Nicola Willis. Do you have concerns there?
I think the tension here is that the government think that pushing house prices back up again is going to fix the economy. It isn't going to fix the economy. It didn't fix the economy last time, and for a lot of Kiwi families it made things worse. It shut a whole generation of Kiwi homeowners out of the housing market. But that seems to be what this government's strategy is. Push the Reserve Bank to get interest rates down further, get house prices back up, so everyone will feel richer and start spending more money. That's not the way it's going to happen.
All right, Housing Minister Chris Bishop, he is for falling house prices. Christopher Luxon, though, wants those modest, consistent increases. So who is right here?
Well, Christopher Luxon clearly is not on the side of Kiwi home buyers. He thinks that Kiwi homes should be for rich overseas investors rather than for New Zealand families. I want to make sure that New Zealand families...
It's pretty good messaging here from Chippy. You know, it's not a direct answer, and we would often say, come on, answer the question. It is answering the question, but it's a pretty good redirection back towards, well, of course, he wants house prices to go up because he wants to have more wealthy people. I'm surprised we didn't kind of go, well, he owns several rental properties. Of course he wants his houses to go up. I wonder if Bishop owns none, and that's why he wants them to go down. I don't know.
Rich overseas investors rather than for New Zealand families. I want to make sure that New Zealand families can afford to buy a house, and this government seems to have the opposite objective.
You could also say that he's for boosting the economy too and getting that going.
Well, having a whole bunch of rich people coming in and buying houses that they don't live in isn't going to boost the New Zealand economy. What's going to boost the New Zealand economy is investment in productive businesses, backing our innovators, backing our entrepreneurs, backing businesses that are out there trying to make it in the world, despite the fact that they're being faced with things like high power prices, which the government are making worse, not better. Deal with those underlying issues, and New Zealand businesses will be much more competitive. They'll create better jobs, and the New Zealand economy will recover.
Do you agree that this is sort of mirroring a John Key-esque approach to boosting the economy through house prices?
Well, that worked for John Key. It's not going to work for Christopher Luxon. First of all, house prices start at a much, much higher base level than they did when John Key became Prime Minister. We still have a housing shortage. And ultimately, you know, productive businesses are the ones going broke at the moment. And that's going to make things worse, not better. If Christopher Luxon wants to rescue the economy, he could start by rescuing those businesses, finding a way to rescue those businesses who are going out of business because power prices are so high. That includes a lot of manufacturing.
So we're seeing a little bit of tension between potentially what Christopher Luxon and Chris Bishop think about house prices. So what's Labor's stance on this? What's the policy here?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's nothing new about that. Chris Bishop and Christopher Luxon have a different view on house prices. Winston Peters and Christopher Luxon have a different view on foreign affairs. David Seymour and Christopher Luxon have a different view on just about everything. This government doesn't speak with one voice on anything.
Yeah. Like, you know, people are going to hate me doing this, but same as every government. I mean, like, and this is not a criticism of Chippy, but Luxon could be standing there in 18 months from now going, Hipkins doesn't agree with Chloe Swarbrick on Gaza. Chloe Swarbrick doesn't agree with Marama on da-da-da, because they have different policies. It's actually a good answer, but it's not an answer that's necessarily going to be only used against this government. The difference is this: when he's using it this time around, he's right If he was using it, if it was the other way around, they'd probably not be, because I think the left are going to be far more united. It's funny saying this out loud as I think about it, Chewie. The left is going to be far more united in their message, I think, after the next election, and normally it's the other way around. But the right is the side that does look fractured right now, and the left is the side that does look more united. I mean, all we've got to do is go back to Debbie and Marama high-fiving at the debates last time, and you could see it. You could see it. It's almost like Labour, you guys pull your socks up, Labour, because the Greens and Te Pāti Māori are ready to work together. And so Labour, you need to go and join in as well. It's if they get it right, it could be really interesting to see. This has only got 10 seconds. We'll just play the last 10 seconds.
This government doesn't speak with one voice on anything. When it comes to house prices, we want to see house prices in New Zealand stabilise, and we want to see New Zealand incomes grow so that first home buyers actually can get back into the housing market.
And the reason that answer is so much better than what Luxon does was he did not answer the question to start with. He diverted and made the point, but then after he diverted and made the point, he came back and he answered the question. The difference that you see with many on the other side at the moment is they divert away from the point and they never come back. Chippy, to his credit, diverted from the point to get his political statement out there, which is, this is the coalition of chaos. And then he said, now that I've explained that this is the coalition of chaos, this is what we do with housing. So it was actually, that was gold standard. It was very, very good. That was a very, very, very good politics here, Mr. Chippy. What are your thoughts, Chewie?
It's always heartening to see the leader of the opposition basically repeat the talking points that I've been saying for over a year. Like housing is such a sacred cow here in New Zealand, but we are so slow to realise that it is what makes our economy unproductive, and we're also missing the fucking time bomb that we have of if people reach retirement and they don't own their house, then we have a massive problem. Because we don't have the long-term rentals that they have in Europe, where someone can comfortably rent an apartment or a house for their whole life and the price doesn't fluctuate. So our retirements are all built around the fact of the fact that it's assumed we're all going to own our houses. But that idea is long gone. That is a last generation piece of thinking, and we need to decide whether that's more important, that we actually crash the housing market. We actually make money exit the housing market. We make it, and that's one of the things, you make it hard, you make it a more risky investment. So it puts it on a par of like, well, am I better to put my money into a second, third, fourth house, which at the moment is an absolute no-brainer. If you have the money, it's a tax black hole. You are just going to make money. So buy another house, buy another one, buy another one. Or is it a better idea to spend your money into a startup business, into somebody's product or idea, and you're gambling on that being successful? There is a benefit to our economy if that is successful. There is a benefit to you. We all know that. Chippy obviously knows that. I have a suspicion Chris Bishop might know that. Luxon doesn't. Because that is not how Luxon has made his money.
The not that it's a problem. The reality is, though, crashing the housing market will also crash a whole bunch of people who are currently doing their retirement that way. So how do we do it? And like, you know, there's lots of young couples, young families who have gotten to an inflated housing market, and if we crash the market, they would lose all of their equity, all of their income, and it would be better for some, but they wouldn't. So it's funny, because I agree with, obviously, we need to make housing more affordable. 100% I'm on board, but it's really unclear to me as to how. It just
but
it really
everybody
is.
wants to magic up a solution when nobody gets hurt.
Yeah.
You know, and I think this is such a drastic thing, that there is no option when no one gets hurt. Like there is all the sensible heads are going, we need to do this with as little pain as possible. And I do acknowledge it is the people that bought at the top of the market, the value in their house goes, and you know, they're paying a mortgage that is more than what their house is worth. You know, that happened in the States. People just would give their keys to the bank and walk away. You know, that sort of thing is very, very bad. People that are relying on their house for their mortgage, for their retirement, again, very, very bad. but you need to get the investors out of it.
Yeah, okay. So there's another issue here as well, is apparently we're 10,000 houses a year short every year. So actually it's kind of almost impossible to crash the market because supply and demand. And even if we did crash the market and everything dropped by 20, 30, 40%, whatever, there's still going to be the demand there to purchase the houses that is way outside the supply, which is going to drive house prices back up again. So I wonder, Chewie, if there is a way that we can slow/freeze the market down and make it easier through government, through Kiwi Bank. I mean, we've got a fucking bank there that we can use. Some way that we can
forgotten about that. Absolutely.
some way that we can make it easier for people to get on. Because if we can make it easier for people to get on, then maybe that eliminates the issue of the housing, because one of the reasons is that it's so hot at the moment, or hard, is because they can't get on. It's too much. Maybe there's something that can be done to help people get on. Maybe I could be wrong in this, but I remember stories of well before my time as people buying houses with the government, and then after a few years that they've paid a certain amount off, they then pay the price that they got them for 5 years ago. You know, maybe there's another way we can do it. And you're right. I'm not. This is not coming from a point of, I don't want to lose my equity, but this is coming from a point of the reality of how to do this best. Maybe the reality is we need to help people get into houses, whether the prices are as they are now, if they're down 10% or up 10%. Maybe there's another way.
See, I see people's fascination in the value of their house. I check the value of mine every now and then. But because I only own one house, one of the things to keep in mind is if your house goes down in value and you need to sell your house and buy a different house, you're buying a house in the same market. So the price of that house has gone down as well. Like it's all very theoretical, but it's look at the fear that National is stoking at the moment, that Labor is going to come and tax your family home. Now, this is in the absence of any information from Labor, so National are just spinning at this point. But I think even if Labor do bring in a capital gains tax, land tax, whatever tax, it will not be on the family home. That is too dangerous for them. They won't do it. They might put in something that it's like your third home. Yeah, I could imagine them being that soft, right?
Okay, but listen, let's talk about...
It should be exempt from your family home, and then that's it.
Well,
everything else is taxable. Everything else is income.
But if you want to get rid of the investors, right, then this is how you do it without impacting the others. You do it on the third home or the fourth home. There's going to be retired people out there at the moment who aren't massively wealthy, but they've got a batch because they bought it in the 80s and they've got a home. Now, I don't actually care about capital gains tax on them. Like, I'm not against it. But if what the primary job is for investors, they're the guys with 20 homes. They're the guys with 80 homes. That's the investors. So you could, if you wanted to be really, really directing at the investors, you could say on the fourth home and beyond. I'm not saying I care about the batch or the second home, but that's a way you could target the investors more than, families owning 2 properties or 3 properties.
You could, just a thought that's come to my massive big brain. You could stage it like they were going to do with tobacco. We're going to start by taxing the fourth home, and then in 3 years' time, we're going to tax it from your third home. You see, so you phase it in.
And let me just point this out, because Andrew's made this point. They are investors. Yes, having a rental property, you're an investor, but that's not who we're talking about. We're talking about the investor class, the people who basically they make their money, their income, based off owning 10, 15, 20 properties. They're limited liability companies that are buying hundreds of houses. That's who we're talking about when we're talking about investors, not someone with an investment property is different from what we're calling investors, just to make that perfectly clear.
Yeah. They're a business.
Yeah.
They're deriving an income from the assets that they own. Like, that's real fucking simple.
Yeah.
They should be paying tax on that. At the moment that they don't, and this government has made it very clear that they don't want the property owning class to pay tax. It's fucked.
Yeah. There's another way you could do this as well, and we'll move on after this comment because there's another bit of Chippy to play. Is that I've always sort of thought, when they always talk about, people have been buying houses for their retirement, yada, 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 from the older couple, that maybe you could also have a date that when you purchase from CGT is applied to. So those people who are in their 70s and 80s and stuff who bought a house 15, 20 years ago, and they bought it, let's be honest, because the government weren't looking after retired people well enough when these guys were in their 40s, so they bought it to retire on. So maybe what you could do, and this is the number I've always thought, CGT applies to properties purchased after the date KiwiSaver started. So if a house was bought before KiwiSaver was there, they're exempt. They're grandfathered in. No worries. If they were bought after KiwiSaver, that's when you can start putting CGT on. It would give you a tangible line and a logical reason as to why you've done it. Just a thought. Just a thought. All right, let's just get to this because we've talked a bit about his comments around Hipkins, Bishop and all the freaking Chris's. We've talked about his comments around Chris and Chris, and now Chris is going to talk about his comments about Chris and Penny, because there was a bit of confusion around Penny promising or making the pledge or saying that they were going to get rid of gang patches. So there's a bit of mixed messaging coming out of Labour as well.
All right, I want to ask you about gang patches too. You're talking about people that aren't agreeing potentially on policy. Last week, Tamaki Makaurau candidate Pene Henare said he would repeal the gang patch law. You've said, though, that you wouldn't repeal the legislation making it illegal to wear gang patches in public. So what is your stance?
The Labor Party's stance is we oppose to the gang patch introduction or the ban on gang patches, but we're not going to repeal it. We think there's more important things to do in that area. Gang activity has continued to increase despite the fact that patches have been taken away. There's more gang members today than there ever have been. Methamphetamine use, which is one of the gang's main lines of business, has doubled since the gang patch ban was introduced. So it's made gang activity less visible, but it has certainly hasn't tackled the issues with gangs.
So what about the inconsistency with your party line and Mr. Henare's then? Is it a bit of inconsistency going on here?
Well, Penny Henare was asked for a personal view in the context of a by-election campaign. He shared that. But the Labor Party view and the Labor Party position is that we won't be repealing the gang patch ban.
He's obviously standing, like we said, he was started with voting yesterday. How is his campaign going? And do you think he's on track to win the seat?
We'll leave the actual thing about it, because there's an interesting thing there, and I guess when I hear politics, sometimes I think about what are they going to say, and you can see that there is an attack ad coming out, which is, how can these guys say that what we did was the worst thing in the world by banning patches? It wasn't going to work, yet they're going to keep it. The flip side to that is if Labor was to say, well, we're going to just cancel the gang patch ban, they're soft on gangs. There's sort of no win here for Labor, and it is a mixed message, and Penny probably put his foot in it by doing that. And it's actually a tough one, because, if you say we're going to cancel the gang patch ban, you're soft on gangs. If you say you want to stick by it, you're a hypocrite because you told us not to do it.
Yeah, but again, this is what we've talked about. National are going to criticise Labor regardless of what Labor does. Like, they're already criticising Labor for like, I saw a thing on Instagram today, some fucking dreadful video, saying that Labor is pro-mongrel mob. They're doing it already. So then fuck what they think. Act on principle. That's what we want. That's what we want to vote for, right? You said when they brought this in that it was a breach of human rights, that it was a terrible piece of legislation, that it was a waste of time law. You've gone on TV now and you said, look, it's not accomplishing anything. It's not hurting the gangs at all. It's business as usual. So stand on that. Stand on those things, your words and actions. Make it consistent and go, we're going to get rid of this because it's a garbage piece of law and it is a distraction. We know how to combat gangs. We were doing it before National got in. we were having an effect on that. We were having an effect on their revenue streams and all of that sort of thing. Stand on your principles.
I wonder if there's quite an easy way around this question now that I think about it, actually. What you do as the leader of the opposition, you go, if we get in, we're going to take advice from the Human Rights Commission. If this is seen to be a breach of human rights, then we'll get rid of it. In saying all of that, this is not high on our agenda. You know, a piece of clothing on someone's back. What's high on our agenda is, and lay your thing out. You know, you could put it to the side by saying we're going to look at this when we get in. Obviously, we don't believe in breaching anyone's human rights. If this is that, we will address it then. Done. To the side. Gone.
We're going to get people out of the gangs by improving the situation in their communities, by making sure that they have jobs, by making sure that the economy is geared for everyone, not the wealthy. Hammer that point for every time you're in front of the camera.